Oh, hello there. Sorry. Didn't see you there. My name's Keith, and I'm here to ask you to give Star Wars The Phantom Menace another chance. Before I get into things, let me just give you my Star Wars bona fides, as it were. I was born in 1997, so obviously not old enough to have seen Phantom Menace in the theater. Even if someone did take me at the time, my little soft baby head just would not have retained any of the information because I would have been about 2 years old. I did see Attack of the Clones in the theaters. However, I don't remember most of it. I just remember, for some reason, I decided to get up and run around the theater at the end, and I clearly remember those action sequences, with the clones and all that stuff. I feel bad for all the audience members. I must have kind of ruined it a bit. Anyway, and then Revenge of the Sith. That I was definitely fully conscious for as a human being. Me and all my friends were into it. It's all we could talk about. When they released the first images of Anakin with the Sith eyes and the hood. Me and my friends would be like, his new apprentice. And it was great. It was my favorite movie of all time. When it came out, it was pretty much everyone I knew was their favorite movie if you were into Star Wars. And then shortly after that, I remember we were at Sam's Club with my family, and I got the 2006 Star Wars A New Hope DVD that had the special bonus disc with the theatrical cut of A New Hope. And then that sort of kickstarted my whole love of, the original trilogy. Even though I was aware of it before, I just hadn't really ever sat down and watched them. Bits on TV or at friends' houses and stuff like that. And and of course, we to address the elephant in the room, we all know the current state of Star Wars, how we got here, and all that. So, not going to talk about that. And so, before I get into the Phantom Menace and why you should give it another chance, let's wind the clocks back to the 1970s. George Lucas has decided that he wants to make a Flash Gordon adaptation. He wants to bring it to film because when he was a kid in the 50s, he saw the televised reruns of the original Flash Gordon serials from the 1930s. And that's kind of what he fell in love with. Specifically, I believe the original serial he watched was Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe. And I'm sure he must have watched the other ones, Space Soldiers, Trip to Mars, because he incorporates things from those in his movies as well. But definitely Flash Conquers the Universe. When you watch it, you can just see it, every frame there's another Star Wars influence, something that influenced Star Wars. And so what ended up happening was he couldn't get the rights to make a Flash Gordon movie. So he was fuck it, I'm going to make my own Flash Gordon. He makes Star Wars. And he read a bunch of sci-fi novels, right, to get inspiration. I don't believe he acknowledges every inspiration, but it was part of his process was just reading sci-fi novels, watching old sci-fi films, and he of course The Hero's Journey, that's a big influence as well. Multiple other film influences like Kurosawa, etc. And he created a pastiche of different influences, but at its core, Star Wars was Flash Gordon, right? That's what he was doing. You can take everything else was kind of just influence and set dressing and little nods and stuff, but that's the core of it is Flash Gordon, right? That's why when they were when they were making the A New Hope, his one. People joke about it, oh, he's a bad director. All he knows how to say is faster and more intense. Well, he's saying that because that's how they talked in those old serials. It was exciting, and he really, that's all you got to do. You don't even have to. The level of writing in those old serials, if you watch it, it's very basic and simple, but something about it works. It's fun. It's just fun. It's exciting. It's inspiring sometimes. It's not trying to be more than it is. It just is. And that's how we get into the Phantom Menace. I believe that Phantom Menace is a fantastic, adaptation or inspired by Flash Gordon, whatever word you want to put onto it, right? It is like a spiritual successor to that original idea of A New Hope and Flash Gordon, carrying on that, and Flash Gordon itself is really just like knockoff Buck Rogers. Buck Rogers is just knockoff, John Carter, Princess of Mars, all that. But each one's managed to add something new to it. And so, it kind of just blows my mind a little bit that, people got into the theater. And I understand why people don't like The Phantom Menace. There are certain things, like Jar Jar, yeah, I can get that. So maybe a little too much for certain people. But overall, I really think it's just spot on Star Wars, like through and through. Spot on Flash Gordon through and through. Go back and watch those old Flash Gordon serials. You can find them all for free online in pretty decent quality. If you want, slightly better quality, you can get the DVDs for pretty cheap too. And once you watch those, you will see like how much Phantom Menace is just Flash Gordon. And once that like connects in your brain, kind of like all the stuff about like, oh, the dialogue is bad, oh, the acting is bad, or no. For what he's trying to do, which is make Flash Gordon, it's exactly right. Like, it's exactly spot on doing what it set out to do. And I think the reason people didn't like The Phantom Menace and, the other prequels is because they just didn't understand that fully. They thought Star Wars was something else. Like, oh, it's supposed to be a space western, or it's a space, samurais in space, or what did Patrick H. Willems say? It's a show about, space wizards, right? Like, it's just space wizards. Like, no. If we're going to sum it up into like a simple sentence, Star Wars is Flash Gordon, right? That's it. And once you kind of realize that in your head, everything else that George Lucas does in the movies starts to make sense. And there's people that even kind of maybe know that, like they know the facts, they know the history that it's inspired by Flash Gordon, but it just like their brain just doesn't connect. Like, that's why it's filmed the way it is. That's why it's written, acted the way it is. Like, again, George isn't the best, dialogue director, but he doesn't really need to be anyway for what he's doing. Another reason I think that Phantom Menace is fantastic is that it's sort of like, to me, it feels like Lucas's magnum opus. Like, it's him redeeming himself after the, what many would have thought of as a kind of, not a failure with Return of the Jedi, but it was definitely disappointing for a lot of people. I didn't grow up with it, so I can't really speak to that, like experiencing at the time, but I do understand, why people would be upset at, oh, it's just a second Death Star, oh, like, the first half of the movie is really great, but then slice it in half and it's just kind of boring. Han is kind of just phoning it in the whole time. Another big shortcoming, the Ewoks, right? The thing everybody hates the most from Return of the Jedi is the Ewoks. And the reason that the Ewoks even happened is that they just didn't have the budget for it. Lucas wanted to do Wookiees, but they were like, crap, we don't have enough, we don't have enough fur material, so okay, all right, we'll just slice them in half or quarter it or whatever, and then bam, got Ewoks. And then Phantom Menace comes around, and finally, right, George has got the money, he's got the technology, perfect, and it's like that perfect mix of practical and digital. And yeah, we get the Gungans, and it's great. Like, right, we get to, finally, he's able to, like, fully, like, put what's in his mind onto the screen, and I think that's great. I think it's awesome, Yeah, so to conclude, TLDR, watch those old Flash Gordon serials, give Phantom Menace another chance. And yeah, thank you for your time.